Good afternoon, English 11 Honors. We are going to be talking about commas this week and part of next week. And using commas correctly is definitely part of the ACT as you guys are preparing for that. As a junior, you are going to get a voucher that you can take the ACT anytime during junior or senior year. So I highly encourage you to do that. And one big piece for the English section of the ACT is an emphasis on commas. So we're going to talk about 5 important comma rules. Today we're just going to cover 3 of them, and then you're going to do an exercise to practice. So let me walk you through some of those. So the first rule is use commas to separate items in a series, including the comma before the conjunction. So I think that most of us, when we have items that we're talking about, he took his pencil, paper, and Chromebook to class, we would usually put commas between those. We should put commas between those. The last thing that it's talking about is what's called the Oxford comma. If you've heard of that before, it's just making sure you include that comma that comes before the conjunction, like before and or before or. And the ACT wants you to use that. So it is not incorrect in regular writing, just out in the real world if you don't use that comma. However, I would highly suggest that you do because you will need it for the ACT. And it also helps us it keeps us from misreading some sentences, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. So we have this sentence. The book is dedicated to my parents, Maya Angelou, and God. So if we don't use that second comma, if we put one after parents, but we didn't put one after Maya Angelou, then it sounds like that the person is dedicating the book to their parents and that the parents are Maya Angelou and God, and that obviously would not be correct. So we want to use, that would be that example, like I'm saying. If you only put it after parents, then that's going to be confusing to your reader because it sounds like Maya Angelou and God are the parents. So we definitely want to include that last comma before the and. The book is dedicated to my parents, comma, Maya Angelou, comma, and God. However, if the parents are John and Kate, then we're going to put it after parents and understand that John and Kate are the parents. So you as the writer, it's important for you to clearly express to your reader what you're talking about, okay? If you're dedicating the book to my parents and then John and Kate are other people, then you're going to put that comma after John, and that's going to alert your audience to the true meaning of what you're saying. Okay, this one is a more straightforward one. The teachers may use illustrations, examples, and presentations. We want to put that comma after illustrations and after examples. All right. Sorry. Well, we have a lot of those, apparently. Sorry about that. Rule number 2 is to use a comma before a coordinating conjunction, which those are the fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, all of those, hopefully you learned that in middle school or somewhere along the way, that those coordinating conjunctions, just words that help join words, phrases, clauses together, are the fanboys. They are the coordinating conjunctions. And here we're talking about when they're joining independent clauses. So something that is a complete idea all by itself can stand alone. We want the comma plus the coordinating conjunction. So for instance, if we have these sentences, so hopefully you can take a second and look at those and think about where would you put the comma? First off, you want to know, are both pieces of the sentence complete ideas? And in these 3 cases, they are. So for the first one, we're going to put one after carefully. So I followed the recipe carefully. That is a complete idea. And the pie still didn't turn out right. That is also a complete idea. They're both independent clauses. So we need to join them with comma plus the coordinating conjunction. A comma by itself isn't strong enough to join them together. The conjunction by itself is not strong enough to join them together because they're independent clauses. If you're just joining 2 words, like Jess and Jim, they're just 2 words. You don't need the comma. The conjunction is enough. But if it's two independent clauses, you need that comma plus the fanboy plus the conjunction. Okay, the second sentence is important for us to put in that comma for sure, not only because they're two independent clauses, but otherwise we're going to misread the sentence. The teacher called on Jack and Sue, it sounds like. The teacher called on Jack and Sue and then began to answer. We would have to reread that to understand. So to make it clear, and because they're both complete ideas, we're going to put one after Jack. The teacher called on Jack, complete idea, comma, fanboy, Sue began to answer, also a complete idea. And then you'll be using computers all of your life, comma, but you still should have legible handwriting. Okay, again, two complete ideas, and we're joining it with comma plus a coordinating conjunction. The third rule is to use a comma to separate two or more adjectives preceding a noun. So that means coming before a noun, which in English is where most adjectives come. We can have predicate adjectives that come later in the sentence, but usually when we're describing something, we put our adjectives before the noun. The one exception is do not use a comma before the final adjective if that adjective is thought of as part of the noun. So we think of the two things as one idea. It still will have an adjective followed by a noun, but we think of those two things together. So take a look at those and think about where would you put the commas? And are there some that don't need a comma? So for our first one here, Peggy is an intelligent, thoughtful student. Okay, so we have two things describing the student, Peggy. She is intelligent and she is thoughtful, so we're going to put a comma between those two adjectives. One thing, two little tricks actually that you can use to know whether or not to put the commas between the adjectives is one, can you put an and where you put the comma and does it still make sense? Peggy is an intelligent and thoughtful student. Yes, that makes sense. And can you flip the order? Peggy is a thoughtful, intelligent student. Okay, we can flip it. We could put an and in there. It still makes sense. So we need a comma to separate those two adjectives. Now, the next sentence is one that exception was talking about because most of us think of video game kind of as one idea. So we do not need a comma here because we would not say, let's play this new and video game, and we would not say, let's play this video new game. Okay, so video game has become kind of this one concept, and so new is describing all of that. All right, the next one is probably the most controversial, but if we keep that same idea going, most of us would say Chevy Corvette is a one thing, like Ford Mustang, Chevy Corvette, Honda Accord. And black is what is describing that. And so it would not be wrong for you to leave it out because we usually would not say his favorite car is a Chevy black Corvette. Okay, that's just not how we order adjectives in English usually. His favorite car is a black and Chevy Corvette. That also sounds kind of odd. So these are two examples of where you have an adjective modifying a noun, but it's kind of functioning as one idea. And so we're not going to separate the other adjectives from Chevy. We're not going to separate them between new and video. Okay, and then same idea for the last one. Cool and crisp, we want to separate because we could say we welcome the cool and crisp autumn days. But autumn days is kind of one thing that we're talking about, or winter evenings, or whatever it may be. So if we said we welcome the cool and crisp and autumn days, it just sounds a little awkward. So those are some examples of that. Okay, so you are going to practice now for yourselves, and I would like you to use commas and not be a psycho, please. So you'll see in that our little funny here, I like cooking my family and my pets. If we don't have commas, then it does sound like we might have a problem. So use those commas I like cooking, comma, my family, comma, and my pets. I like all three of those things. We want to make it clear to our audience what we are trying to accomplish with the meaning of our sentence. So you are going to be doing, it's a form, it's from our grammar book that we have, but you don't need the grammar book to do this. The form has the sentence in it, it has your possible answers, and I formatted it like the ACT and that you have multiple answers, and the first one is a correct as is. In ACT, that would be no change. So same kind of thing. So if you think it's perfectly acceptable the way that it is, you're going to leave it as correct as is. And then you have your other options. One thing I also will tell you is there is one of the sentences that uses etc., like etc, the abbreviation etc, period. Anytime that you're using that in a sentence, you are always going to put a comma after it. Okay, so you might have a list of, again, he brought his paper, pencil, Chromebook, and backpack, etc. to class. After the etc, it's going to have a comma after that. So remember that as you do the practice, and I will see you guys later.